I think it's helpful for us to demystify some of the complexity of this work in order for people to have a successful experience. So we're going to dive right in, and I believe some of you have gloves, and there are some more gloves, and I realized everybody got gloves at the first hour, and I didn't have everybody come up to the table, so it's like I want to make sure that people get a chance to do this. And so I'm very curious, who has never rung four-in-hand bells at all? Okay, so I'm really interested in you actually being at the table, because I think it's good for us to learn how to teach people who've never done it, what to look for, how to make those corrections. How many people have rung who just direct and kind of know how to do it but haven't really rung it? You direct it but you haven't really. So there are a lot of people who've had good four-in-hand experience. How many, I guess there are people here who do four-in-hand but don't have bells to do four-in-hand. So you've had that experience but you don't have enough, you don't have the extra octaves of bells to do that. Does that describe somebody here? Okay. So I will start by talking about the working space, which is something you'll hear me continue to say because I think it's really important, and I think it's a piece of our how we can help people be successful, and that is to make sure that the working space is in a particular way. And since our working space changed a little bit because we had, they got us a better table, then I'm going to just work with this right now. I said it to a previous class that when I first rang bells, I set them up based sort of on a scale thing. E and F sharp and E flat and F were sort of these little pairings because that made sense to me theoretically from a musical theory standpoint, but when I went to play, I needed to mix things all up, and so my friend leaned over and said, "Didn't you get a degree in piano?" And I said, "Yes," and so that's when I learned that laying out the bells like the keyboard was really helpful. And while that may seem a little elementary, sometimes the most obvious things do not come to us so easily. I believe in the four-in-hand setup that I have found it to be most successful if I set it up like the keyboard as well. When I watch my ringers come out and set up their bells, they tend to do this with their bells. And these are really all over the place, which is good. They tend to set theirs up like this. So if I were the E and F6 ringer, my bells would end up looking like this. And the problem I have with this is they're all straight in a line. I can't see the sharps and the flats. And I didn't say this before today while I've been talking about the space in the bell positions being laid out so that the accidentals are up. It's like the black notes on the keyboard. You really want them to be your landmarks. You want them to be forward. And I recommend them being a full casting's worth higher. Then you don't get this problem, which you get all the time, things rolling. If they're this far, at least if they roll into each other, you don't hear it. So I really like them to be that noticeably different. And it takes up a little less space. So there are a lot of advantages to doing that. Besides, there's a visual impact that I don't have to look at. I can just reach for this bell now. I don't have to know exactly which one. Hopefully it's the right one that's there, but so I like to do the same thing up here. And 9 times out of 10, the E flat's going to be played with the left hand, and the E is going to be played with the left hand. And again, I've got this much space. And now, I mean, I'm much more at peace. This is much more relaxing to me. That was all a lot of bells, and it looked a little intimidating. I know where the 6s are, I know where the 7s are. They're ready to go. And so I think having the space laid out is half of the battle. Now when we get to this point, this particular is 4 octaves right here, so we go as high as the G And then there is the dilemma of the C sharp. Who gets the C sharp? The C sharp 7? I believe that the C person at the top gets the C sharp, and this person gets the D flat. Does that make sense? The position 11 up there gets C sharp when it's C sharp. And I'd say, again, this is maybe 8 times out of 10. This is the best choice. There'll be some people, this person a lot of times will go, oh, it's hers, or it's his. You know, they just automatically want to get rid of this bell. But again, because of the notes are usually additional, if you're playing this note, this is not a big deal to play when the way the octaves work. And so we're right now just talking about how the notation is written and how it lends to where you want to assign this bell. So when it's a D flat, this person's playing the D flat 6, so it makes sense that they would double it. That person oftentimes, it's a melodic thing, and they're in the key, they have a C sharp instead of a C natural. It makes sense for them to play it up there, even if this person could double it down here. So, and then sometimes the music itself, you know, necessitates one thing or the other. So I want to start as far as us talking about about 2 basic techniques. One is called Shelley, and the other is 4 in hand. And I've put a lot of verbiage down here, but I probably won't read straight down the list, so if I forget something, you've been very good so far to point out if I've left something out today, and I appreciate that. So that's good, and I want to make sure I have a hard stop at 11:40 because we have worship right after this. So I would love to start with some volunteers on the back row. And let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 6 people can do that. Yes, go. Yeah, just go for it. Yeah, I'd love to have some people who've not done it before. Where did the glove box go? Oh, there's some there. Thank you.
There's some at the end of that table.
And there's some at the end of the table. That's great. The picture you see at the bottom of this list just shows you how they will be set up. You notice that the bells are both, do you see the little symbol that shows that the bells are going the right direction, the little bell sign on the handle itself? They're both faced up. Do you see that? So when you look down at a bird's eye, this is a bird's eye view. I guess I should put gloves on too. So we can spread this out a little bit, and we'll just take 2 apiece. It doesn't matter that they're not. Is Michelle in here? Michelle Gibson? Anybody know Michelle Gibson? Her name tag's here.
Oh.
Yeah. I think we can do 6. Each person do 6. I think you just walk it down and stay there. That'll just be easier. Yeah, you just take these 2 right here. You take these 2, and you take these 2. Grab 2 and move down. Yep, it's okay. Grab 2. We're just spreading out a little bit. Okay, that looks good. We'll come back and get some more people in a second. So the way they were originally set up was for 4 in hand, so you're going to make 1 adjustment to the handles. You know, on every handle there's a designation that says this is the correct. Would you make sure as you look down it, those are both facing up? So just flip the handle 1/4 turn, probably away from you. So if you took your hand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the thumb is going to be on one side. I'm just thinking about the right hand bell. So you want to set these up so the 2 bells on top go towards the middle, like that. So you have 2 bells. Don't worry about the fact that they're sharps or flats. Does that make sense? So you have a position that looks like that. Why don't you pick up the big bell, the bell on top, and you can take both in. Yeah, that's fine. Then reach down and grab the other one. them back down again. I'll show you one thing that I think makes it a little bit easier. Most of the time when people pick these up, can you see my three? My three is this finger right here. Can you see that? See how it's out around the outside of the bell? I'll show you as well. Here's my three. Sometimes that's kind of too much to grab onto. You really just need it right here. Does that make sense? It's tucked under. I'm holding down the handle, but some of your fingers aren't long enough to get all the way around here without feeling like you're hurting yourself. This is plenty strong, plenty secure. So I've just tucked the three onto this handle of this bell. Can you see that from where you are? When people do this, there's an extra stress in the hand that's really hard to explain, but you've probably experienced it. This is plenty. My fingers, this little bell isn't going anywhere is the point, okay? You don't have to have a death grip on it. Now, if we hold these two bells up like this, both bells are faced the same direction, the clappers are going the same direction, and you're going to prepare. Some of us talked about preparation earlier. When I prepare, do you notice my handles are parallel to the floor? Okay, so that way my clappers are good and back, and I'm just going to start with the right hand. I'm going to lift up and just go forward. So try that. No set pattern, just like you're knocking on a door. Great. Put one down, lay it down. Now, if your hand goes too far over, it probably won't ring. So this is about keeping the bells up. If you get like this, then you're in trouble. Partly for your wrist right here, and partly nothing happens. Right here in this position, the clappers are back. The gravity has pulled them back, and that means all I have to do, it's almost like tap, tap, tap with a hammer on the wall. So, do that for me. Not much arm, just wrist. Great. Is everybody doing okay back there? Good. So let's do just the right hand. Right. We're just going to go right at the road, just with the right hand. Great, and you can dampen any way you choose. So this is just a great start. It's very simple. The bells are all going the same way. We want to make sure that we prepare. If we start like this and just push out, we're in trouble. But if we just think about just knocking, this is very simple. We can add all the rest of it later, but you have to get the bells to ring in the first place. Okay? Let's explore with the left hand at your own rate. So just try the left hand and see how it behaves. Great. So let's do it left, right, left, right. And before we start, you notice we're just talking about ringing right now, yes? There's another part to this, but we'll start with the ringing. Let's try that. You set the tempo. I love that look, doesn't it? You don't have to switch them, but you can do it once. Which is great. So one of the things that we talked about earlier today with the group about teaching a basic bell technique was the bicycle. And the part about doing this on the bicycle and then coming forward towards you is that there's a piece on the bicycle that keeps you from doing all this or all of this. It keeps you on a line. So geometry is really important to ringing forward hand. A lot of times people think they have to snap or do all these funny things. Just use gravity and go down that same line you normally do. You always come down the same line, boom, boom. So now we're going to add a little bit more motion to it. And I'll let you set the pace at it just a little bit slower, left, right. A couple of things. The reason it doesn't ring is because it wasn't, the handles weren't up, so you didn't have enough gravity. I'm starting to see a lot of good preparation. Did you see that? If you just start from here, remember you don't have as much control over the volume of the bell. So if you prepare, you can play. You can play softer, but if you just start from here and ring, you'll be in trouble. So making sure that you prepare before you start. Let's do it one last time. Let's go from right to left. That's good, that's good. So we've been ringing. Everybody's ringing well, yes? There's a lot of LV going on, yes? We're letting it vibrate through, so we want to make an adjustment and just ring with no letting it vibrate. And so that gets us to the question about damping. There are a couple of options for damping. You can damp on the table, but for our sakes, right now we'll just do damping on the body. A lot of times people would like to damp forehand this way. And I'll do it for you. Well, there's a wrist activity to that doesn't feel very good to me. I'm really an advocate for this, which requires a little more space. Do you see my elbows? And now I take it. So that means that ENF 6 person says, I need more space. It's not for their bells.
Yeah.
It's for their elbows, okay? Because they could get pretty vicious, you know. So you need a little space, and you need to feel good about that. So I'm up here, okay? And here's the reason put it down for just a second. Here's the reason. When we get into the forehand, which we're going to use 99% of the time instead of shelling, going ahead and getting comfortable up here is really important, because if you have to do something really fast like a ring touch, okay? Now, ladies, this is where you have a little advantage. You can move down just a little bit and damp, but you're fine. You know what I'm talking about? Don't feel like you have to damp at your shoulder. Damp on the chest. It's perfectly fine to do. But you just have to relax the elbow and let it float out. Out here. There you go.
This one's still not touching my body.
And bring your wrist down. Look at it.
I can't twist it anymore.
Can you roll it anymore? Then move down further on the chest if you can. Yeah, that's okay. So, it just gives you more options for ringing faster techniques, especially like a ring touch, that kind of thing. And it's going to save your wrist over time. So now let's add the damping to it, and let's start low to high. And remember, just like in regular ringing, you want to damp when you ring the other one. It's okay. That's okay, that's okay.
I'm going to have to do this.
You're okay. Let's do one more. Same thing. Stop for a second. Prepare. You're just starting to take a breath. There you go. Good. Now, one of the things I've noticed, playing one of your handles, the harder you grip these, the more they're going to turn. And all of a sudden, only one bell is playing. That's all. So you just want to relax your hands and just trust that whatever you're holding on to is not going anywhere. Okay? So that's basically shelling. Shelling gets used when there's an extended open octave Not a lot of chord stuff in the middle, but just a big running octave section. You get a lot of power, you can play really loudly, and you can play really softly with shelling. More so, I think, controlling dynamics than the four-in-hand. Okay. Now, the four-in-hand allows you to play the set of bells in your hands 3 different ways, and this is what we're going to move to. It's much more versatile. It's what I recommend for people when they're sight reading a piece of music. Just put it on a four-in-hand and just hold it that way. It's very comfortable and it's a lot of fun. So what we're going to do differently is we're going to lay the bells down exactly the same way they were laying on the table. You don't have to change a thing with how the bells are. You're going to take the handles and you're going to turn them 1/4 turn towards your stomach. Just one flip towards your stomach. So this time I want you just to pick up the bell that's on top, just like you normally would, both hands. I think this is the biggest challenge for four-in-hand ringers when they're first learning to ring four-in-hand, not shelling. And that is they want to hold the combined set in some funny sort of way. This is their rock. Your 2 big bells that you normally ring, holding them like you normally would, we're adding on to that. So that's your basic. So go ahead and let it against your shoulder like you might normally do if you were ready to play. That's how it should feel. We're just adding on a bell as an extension. The way you hold the bells have nothing to do with that little bell you're getting ready to pick up. This is what you want to feel like all the time. Now you're going to reach down lightly and you're going to lay them sideways and make sure that the handles stay, and you're just going to pick them up between your 2 and your 3. And you're going to come right back up to that same spot, just like you normally would. Remember, these little guys are just an extension. And go ahead and just let the big bell rest, not your whole set. Good. So now we're just going to ring left, right, just your regular big bell. We're not worried about the little bells. We're just ringing the big bell. That's okay. Good. Lay them down, please. What you noticed was 95% of them played both of their bells. So let's talk about that. Pick your big bells up, just like you normally would, and let's just do the same exercise we just did. Try the left hand down. Is it going in the right direction? Lay it down and see if the bell's up.
Yes.
Okay? It could just be stiff. Try it again. Good. Good. Let's do right to left and come back down. Now, all I'm doing, just so you know, I'm getting them to remember what it's like to ring that bell, okay? Because sometimes when people add the other one, it's like, whoa! No, this is your basic thing. So let's go from right to left. Great, I'd love to have them in my bell choir, wouldn't you? I mean, that's just really nice. Now we're just going to reach down and pick those up easily and come right back up to the shoulder. Don't make a big fuss out of it. Great, go down and lay them down again. And pick your big bells up only and come back. We're just going to go back and forth a couple of times. Go down and pick up the little guys again. You just want to feel like that's an extra thing, okay? Not a big fuss, not a big... Now, here's where the real big geometry piece comes. You can lay them back down again. So we've got 2 bells going in 2 different directions, yes? I like to talk about when they're holding these bells up. Can you see the little bells? They kind of like shooting guns, that sounds really bad in today's world, but you know what I mean? If they're doing this or if they're doing this, which a lot of times they'll do this. I want it to be, so it's like point those little bells right at, so you just want, I'm giving you stuff to think about, so hang on just a second. So here's the other piece of that. This bell rings in this direction. Right now, this bell is in this direction. Does that make sense? We're going to go deep here for a second. I want to be on on this plane that runs straight out from my body. And I want this bell to be straight up and down, okay? Sometimes the bells are adjusted on this little bell. Do you hear it? I didn't have to do very much, and neither did you. So, if this bell is going this way and this bell is going this way, and I don't want this bell to ring, and it's set to go that way, I want gravity to help. So I'm going to tip this big bell this way, just ever so much to make the clapper of this bell go down this way. I'm going to let gravity work. So I think about it like this. Here's the plane, and I'm just gonna do a slight V. If you do a big one, it's not very comfortable. So I'll show you what it looks like from. So if I'm like this and I'm ringing and I'm getting that big bell, I wish I had a big contraption that showed the axis going this way. I'm gonna. So can you see the little bell clapper? You see what it's doing? I want you to pick your right bell up, and I just want you to run the axis this way. I want you to feel the clapper move and the little bell. Do you feel it? Can you feel that clapper go back and forth? Now, just find out where it goes to where it clicks the other way, towards the outside. And now we're just going to ring the right hand. What we're trying to do is, here they're both ringing. I mean, I just moved it very, very slightly this way. And now, but if I kept going back towards the middle, all of a sudden it adds on the little bell. But if I come back this way, gravity has pulled the clapper of this one down. Now I'm talking really heady stuff. I would never say this in a bell rehearsal with a bunch of people. Does that make sense? But when you, so I would just say V out just a little bit. That's what I'm going to tell you. So let's do just the right hand coming down and see if we've got it. That was just the big bell. That's okay. Yes. Okay. Let your bell sound, Ashley. Let go. It's okay. Now hold the big bell up just like you normally do. She started to do it, but she didn't. She started to get her left hand involved, and I just say, leave your left hand alone. You don't get to have the luxury of using the other hand to set it up. Great. Pick up the left hand bell as well. The whole set. But it should be towards you. Now, let's do left, right, left, right. And let's just be nice and slow about it. So we're listening to see if it's just the big bell. Hang on just a second. Remember, you want to ring it on this line. And you want to ring with this bell. Relax. Shoot guns at me. There you go. You want your, yeah, that's fine. But you don't necessarily have to do this. It's only if the little bell is ringing a line.
Okay.
Okay? So straight down this line. Now, dance the little one as well. Just bring it. Be out. Just a second. Right again. Damp again. You could just be the bells. Now you're showing me the back of your hand. Shoot guns at me. There you go. Now I'm just using language. You watch her make her adjustments. It's very good. Be out just a little bit more. It's a little better. Let's keep going.
Too much to think about.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a lot. It's a lot. You're doing great. Ring a little bit more of the big bell. Go a little bit farther and don't snap quite so hard. Okay. You're doing great. I'll tell you what I noticed. Here's what I noticed. This is not about you. This is about anybody who could be doing. Do it one more time. There. Now you know that change.
That was darling.
Here, you brought your belts up.
Okay.
Okay, you were pushing to
Okay.
make it, and you went. Okay, that's
Should
okay.
I
It's
try
okay.
again?
It's okay. No, try again. You're doing great. so hard. Do more prep instead of pushing. That bell's really tricky. Do the right bell. Don't worry about the left bell. Good. Hang on a second. Bring them straight. You're ringing them out. So my handles, this one bell should be straight. So point is to, there you go.
I like that.
Then hold these back, guys. Lay your little bells down. Come back to this. This is your home. Now just add those little guys.
That's what you said.
Grab. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
You know what?
See,
You're
I'm-
concentrating on doing this V thing. You may not need to. Okay? You know what? I want you to ring down this line. What's happening is you're ringing, you're showing me the phrase of your hand, and I just want you to ring the bell like you normally ring. There you go. It's okay. Do it again. You're holding me this and tip them back. Yeah. That's okay. Good. Let's go right to left. You get another chance. Now, just a second. Make sure that you don't turn them out. Just think about ringing the big bell. Now, go ahead on this one and just tilt it out. Oh, you know what? Put them down. This is what's happening. When I ask her to tilt, she's doing this. Do you see it? I'm asking you to tilt and you're turning out this way. I want you to take this bell on this axis and do this with it, not this. Okay? We're going to go that way, not that way. So, you want to make sure that your bells are still in a cross, yes? They're still in a cross. Make sure they don't get stuck up like this. They should stay. That's why you just want to relax your thumb. Just let it rest on this bell, this finger, and you're just gonna tip and still ring straight down this line. Try it. Good. Left hand? Was that your left hand?
Oh, that was my right.
Good. Left hand? Good. Your bell is facing like it's gonna go this way. Can you? This bell. Tilt out this way, just a tap. Not this way, just yeah, that's the snippy bell. I'll come back and look at that, but that's weird. You're good. Now, lay down for a second. This is one of the biggest challenging things to teach. They are so hard on themselves. They're doing a great job, yes? Because you're glad they're up here and not you, right? So you've got to say, I'm learning, yes? That's all you're doing is learning. Let's talk about the next piece of this, because I think when you, that's how to ring the big bell, okay? Now we're going to talk about how to ring the little bell. So we've got this bell, and then we've got this bell. So I just want you to do this action. This is just take your right hand, because it's easy, and then just pop this guy up. So the big bell's straight up and down, and then it's this way, okay? And when you do this little bell, you just knock on the door, kind of like cello, yes? Great, stop. So then you can ring and then knock if your bell's really well adjusted. Ring, knock. So normally I would let you explore, but we're just going to do it. So I want you to take your right hand and ring the big bell and then knock the little bell. And for right now, I kind of like the thought of ringing and knocking instead of ringing and knocking down here. So let's just ring and then knock in two different places. Does that make sense? Where you actually strike the bell. That's okay. You know what? For right now, don't worry if the other one doesn't do it. This is about the motion, not about the success of it just yet. Yes? Yes? Don't forget to handles are parallel to the floor, yes. If they just do this, sometimes it'll work, but this just gives them, they have to do something. They can't just, they have to raise up. So I think that's a good thing. So let's go left to right. We're ringing and knocking. Good. Tell me what you found to be successful. You figured something out. What is it? Do you know what it is? At the very top? I'll tell you, I'm going to point it out to you. Some of them will alter immediately what they're doing, which is fine. That's learning. The less motion, the more success. Okay? Watch it and see what happens right to left. What's happening on the end. What you guys are doing is you're still holding your hands this way instead of just holding your belts like they normally would and ringing down the normal plane. Yeah, you're offering everything in your hand when you ring. So just tighten those up. But my sense is that the less motion, the easier to right now, so that you can see. So right now, if you'll just take both belts and ring, knock, ring, just at your own rate. Try it slowly, some of it, try a few slower things, so you really sense of how you're changing.
You just have to not think about it. It has to become part of you.
Great, stop. So that's good. So we did a little organized learning and then a little exploration on their own, because sometimes they're kind of nervous about having to deliver on the spot, and that's not helpful for them when they're learning some new technique. But sometimes it's good for them to hear what's going on or see what other people are doing so that they can learn from each other, which is really good. So we're back to geometry. So here's an angle. What angle would you call this? Say it again.
Right.
Right, and it's how many degrees? Okay. So we have to turn this up, yes? So that's 90 degrees. And what's in between? 45. So we can ring the big bell independently, the little bell independently, and we can ring them together. Now, you may be saying, I've already got that down. I've been ringing that a lot. So when I said earlier about just a small movement, sometimes we go, oh, correction, and we correct way out here. But we just, small movements. And so this is just a small, and you have to find, look at this. Is this not an amazing thing right here? This joint, look at it. It's got a lot of, now some of you have limitations from, broken wrists or football or whatever, and you can't do certain things anymore, but there's a lot of range here, so you have to fine tune it very slowly to finally get there. So you want to make sure you're not making a big correction too quickly. But so if I were so the 45 degree, the way you're going to angle the bells is to have them angled. And I'll say this first, it may sound a little complicated, but here's one spot, here's another spot, and then here's the spot in the middle. Do you see how I could draw that line across my body through down the middle of these two bells? So let me show you. Here's the one, and here's the other. And see, I'm still running down the same line in front of my body. I didn't go over here and over here. I'm just still down the same line. And then I'm going to turn the handles, just so I can, and now there's both of them. And I'm still going down the same line, but if I keep moving my hands, did you hear the little bell go away? So I'm going to come back. There it is. And I'm going to keep doing it. Now it's just the little one. Do you hear it? So all I did was ring on the same line, and I slowly did this with my wrist. In between this and this, okay? So you have to just go slowly. And I think if you were working with someone one-on-one, or somebody said, can I just come in and practice? And I think the answer should always be yes. I'll set up whatever you need to come in whenever you need to come in to have your little practice, is to do this slow thing, ringing. Find it, there it was, okay? Then over time, that's where I want to head towards to get them both to ring. Typically, the harder thing is to get them both to ring. Our challenge is just to get one to ring, okay? So, exactly, this is advanced fast. So I think what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and do all, and then we're going to back up. And I think that's another way to get at it. Does that make sense? I think if this doesn't work, then try something else. And here's just another statement just about teaching in general. If they're not doing something, well, let me say it this way. If they're doing something that you don't want them to do, or they're not doing it the right way, or you don't like what it is, or you want it to be different, you have to change what you're doing to help them. You just can't beat them upside the head and keep saying, do it right. Well, say it a different way. Show them a different way. Keep and being positive and making them feel good about what they're doing, not on the spot like, oh my gosh, they got it and I didn't. Well, we're all different. We're all going to learn at different rates. Our aptitude is all different. And so, and they either you either haven't taught it clearly enough, or they've forgotten what it is, or they're just too overwhelmed with being on the spot. I mean, that's really hard. And again, this gets back to children and youth are easier in these kind of things than adults, because adults have gotten too personal about everything, you know. And so I think you guys are doing a fine job, and you all are learning at your own pace, which is all great. So let's do right, left, and let's do both bells and see if we can find that spot. And let's not judge ourselves. Let's just go down and maybe a half note a little bit slower than what we've been doing. And if they don't both ring, that's okay. But that's the goal. Be really careful that you, I think you did really well. Not everybody's both bells played, but that's okay. We know what the goal is, and that's what it is, the goal, yes? Be careful that you don't feel like you have to swoop around. You should be able to go down that same line. This is about health as well. You should be able to adjust that bell set and run down the same line and get it. You don't have to whip it around. I've got bell ringers in my adult choir. One girl taught the other girl to whip around, and they whip around, and I keep trying to say, but it's not my problem anymore. But I'm still sad because they wouldn't go with me, It's like, and they're not always going to go with you, You can teach them until you're blue in the face, but some people just want to do it the way they've been successful doing it. And so, so let's add one level, because now we're going to experience all three levels. We're going to ring, and then we're gonna knock on the door, and then we're gonna find the in-between place and ring both of them. So we'll ring, knock on the door, in between. So you're gonna be bringing your hand kind of halfway back. Does that make sense? There's this one, and then the full turn, and then back to the middle, and then you're gonna do a knock on the door, if you can, and halfway back. So I want you to go really slowly because I want you to feel the difference. I want you to be really, not just, you know what I mean? I just want you to really be methodical, slow, you know, just very peaceful and try to relax. And start with the back here a little bit more because then you'll have a little, you can, but just so that you're not coming from the hip to shoot out, but you can prepare a little bit more, okay? I'm going to stop you and say one thing, you're doing really great, but when you start so far away from the body, your only way to get them to ring is to force them and it makes the little bell ring. You're great, you're great. So give yourself a little more prep and then you can come down in the same light instead of being out here and feeling like you have to push, and that's the only thing that needs to be different. So let's do the left hand. Play a little bit more of the big bell. So when I say play a little more of the big bell, don't turn the little bell up. Well, remember you ring this way and then you knock on the door? No knocking on the door. Don't start to show that bell at all. Okay? A little more beat out on the right hand. Good. Come back and ring a little, bring it back a little bit farther. Do the whole pattern in the left hand again. Bring your hand back a little bit more. So you do this one, and then you do this one, and you're not coming back far enough.
I'm not coming back like that.
Not far enough. Try it one more time. Good. Pretty close, yeah. Yeah, try the left hand. So let's go back and do the you know, it was very interesting. The first one that you played was both of them. The second one that you played, I don't know. The third one was just the big one. So, and that's what you wanted to notice. Let's try it one more time and be the right hand up. Just oh, don't show me the little bell. Just be the You're holding. You're doing this to be out. You need to tip the bell to the right. When you do this and you come back a little bit more. Good. Go ahead and do the left one. Good. I want to say that because we let her get by with not doing that left one because it was an awkward bell. Don't you have awkward bells in your bell set? You have to learn the instrument, so that's good. That's good. So take this bell and just make sure you keep that little bell tucked in. Now do this with it. You do. Now just tip the bell to the right. Just tip it over a little bit. Keep that little bell in place. So when you do this one, make sure you bring this back just a little bit more before you do both of them. Good. Prep. Oh, look at me. The prep is up here. The handle is this high. I love that. So now we're talking, so here's the question then, your mind has to say, which angle do I need to be moving? I'm trying to move them all. And that makes sense. So remember, this is the angle. Yes?
Okay.
So if you're only getting a little bell, you need to angle back this way. If you're only getting the big bell, you need to angle this way. So part of it is just getting them to practice this rotation, and there's all these ranges on that same rotation. I think you're amazing, and I think you've worked really hard on that, and I have about 1 minute to go down the rest of my list, so thank you. Give them a hand. So I think that you just keep at it. You continue to help them feel good about what they're doing, and praise them when they get it all right, and try not to let them be too hard on themselves. We talked about, I'm on the second page where there's Roman numeral 3, 4 in hand, ringing simultaneously towards the bottom, 1 to Shelley and 1 to 4 in hand. We've already talked about that a little bit. I think when you first start a piece and you don't know it, they should just pick it all up. That's okay. They should just pick it all up and go for it. You know, have them both. There's more versatility. They can ring one bell or both bells. There are very few times in 5-octave music where you just ring the top 7. Usually you're ringing them both. And so you're either reading the 6th or you're ringing both of them together. Not very often. Sometimes, but not. So their best bet. And then once they know the piece, I like them to let go of those 7s when they don't need them. They have more energy, especially they can do shakes if they need to. If they're doing shakes for the 6th, the 7 is probably going to shake along with it. So I like to be really careful about that. I will say that malleting works the same for, I'm on this back page. You can damp on the shoulder, here, on the table, depending on what's coming or going in the music. Thumb damping. I say, everybody can't thumb damp both bells. You just have to get your hands up on the casting. So I don't have a thumb on the bell at all. I have my 2 and 3. You might be able to get this on, but if I do this, listen to the difference. I've already got 1 finger on it. This really chokes it off. And so I think that's a sweeter sound. So I think that works fine. I don't see anybody plucking much these days. So plucking is sort of doesn't happen very much. Malleting, you can mallet both bells at the same time pretty easily if you have to. And I mentioned in an earlier class today, I like people to touch the bells with the mallets so they know where they're headed before they start. That way for that really pretty ending at the end of the piece, they can be looking at you and you say, boom, there it is, okay, instead of whatever crashing things that occur. And then martellato, if you can get the bells Shelleyed and both octaves are to be marted, it's really easy because the clappers are going the same direction. Yes, that makes sense. If I have, if I'm in the 4 in hand position, I've got 1 clapper going one way and 1 clapper going the other, and so all I get is the top bell if I hit the table like I would normally. So you have to tip up on the edge. This is the only time I really advocate playing on the lip of the bell. Can you hear both of them? So I've just stood up on the bells a little bit and dug in. That way, the clappers are there and they come down towards the middle of that. Okay, that's the best way I know to get a mark. Otherwise, you know, turning the handles, you can hear a really nice, clean mart that way. Sometimes you just have to make whatever work for that. And then shaking. I think shaking Shelly is fine. Sorry, it's so loud right here. This is 4 in hand. Tell me which one you like better. This is back to Shelly. I think Shelly, the clappers are both going the same direction. You don't always have the luxury of switching the handles on the piece. I have a friend who's very adept at changing the handles in the air, and it's Stephanie Rhodes, and she's a very big advocate of doing that, and she can do it. I'm like, more power to you, dear, go right ahead. That's one more thing to think about that I can't really do, but I think it's great that there are people who figured out a technique for doing that. The next thing on the sheet has to do with weaving, and there really isn't a whole lot of weaving that we really do in 4 in hand, although sometimes there are pieces that have chromatic lines, and that's when your neighbors might need to help flip handles back and forth. That's a really advanced thing. So I won't say much more about that. But that is Stephanie Rhodes, and she's a very big advocate of doing that, and she can do it. I'm like, more power to you, dear, go right ahead. That's one more thing to think about that I can't really do, but I think it's great that there are people who figured out a technique for doing that. The next thing on the sheet has to do with weaving, and there really isn't a whole lot of weaving that we really do in 4 in hand, although sometimes there are pieces that have chromatic lines, and that's when your neighbors might need to help flip handles back and forth. That's a really advanced thing. So I won't say much more about that. But that is the great joy of 4 in hand ringing, and if you have any questions, I'll be around today, so please